The Ghost Who Wanted a Home. Nicole Jalonen? In honor of Black Lives Mattering. A woman dressed in white with blonde hair ran down a dirt path carrying a crying infant girl in one hand and a lantern in the other. She was an African American woman who had to obey a white family who were very wealthy. Not only did she race through the foggy stormy night with her crying infant, but she carried with her scars from whips and a dark secret she knew she would be beaten for if her mistress caught her. She could hear her pursuers right behind her as she ducked low branches and raced through puddles. Then she saw at the boat her daughter's way out to freedom. Centuries passed, and it was 2020. In Boston, Massachusetts, where a 22-year-old African American woman was struggling to make ends meet for herself and her twin boys. Being a woman of color in this world was not easy. Though slavery was not permitted anymore, African Americans were still treated differently, and were almost demonized by the media, saying that an average of crimes like assault and murders were committed by black men. Yet when white people made it to the news, their crimes were always downplayed, it seemed. Or African Americans were called vulgar names and were accused of stealing always. So Nia Miston and her sons Devon and Sean, ages 10 years old, were always careful and kept their heads down. For fear the same thing that happened to poor George Floyd would happen to one of them, Nia had a degree to become a lawyer and wanted to start her own practice, but knew it was going to be an uphill battle for any firm to even hire her. But she and her boys had moved recently, so she hoped by the move she could find a job as a paralegal. The first few weeks they spent moving their furniture and belongings in their 4-bedroom house they were now renting, and during the move Nia noticed things like dishes and CDs and pillows and hammers being moved around the 2-story house. She didn't think much at first, maybe her sons moved them or the movers. Then the house was moved into and everything was put into its place, and it still happened. Remotes went missing and would appear in different rooms all the way upstairs, or into the attic or the basement. Eventually, as the weeks went on and Nia came home from her temp job as a dog walker, she came home for lunch, peered up to the 2nd story of her house, and saw very clearly a ghost of an African woman in a rag brown dress and very messy wavy black hair staring straight at her through the bay window. No sooner had she saw the ghost woman than Nia stopped dead in her tracks and thought fearfully that a homeless woman had broke in her house. Heart pounding in intense fear, she raced up the front steps and into the upstairs brightly lit with sun room, but the woman was gone. A month later after that, and Nia never saying anything to her sons about what she had seen, her son Sean was at home alone while she was at a friend's place with Devon. Sean was a thin African American boy of 10 years old who loved soccer and painting and watching horror movies. Right now, while his mom was out, he was watching Stephen King's It, even though his mom had forbade the twins from watching that movie until they were older. Right at the part where Never saw the clown and all the blood in the bathroom sink, he heard a strange woman's voice yell, "Bad boy shouldn't watch that." Yet he knew his mom and brother were not home yet. With his heart pounding so loud he thought he could hear it in his ears, he tiptoed upstairs and down looking for an intruder, thinking someone had broken in. But the 10-year-old found no one till he was in the dark cold basement with a flashlight, because the bulb didn't work down there, it only ever flickered on and off. Once Sean entered the basement, the boy felt a rush of cold wind push him backwards and into the brick wall. No bleeding, he heard a cruel man shout, "You don't belong here." So he ran out of the house and waited outside till his mom and brother came home. Now that one of her sons had gotten pushed and hurt by the ghost, Nia called in paranormal investigators to search her new house, and what the team of psychics found, and a priest, was not only did an African woman from slave days still inhabit the house she worked in, but so did her white rich master. Suddenly the psychic women were hit with a vision of a young blank woman in brown torn dress running through a forest with a baby as her mistress, the wife of her master, hot on her heels with a whip, yelling vulgar things at the women and saying the African women would not bear his child, and he and his wife murdered her because she had given birth to her master's child, but they never found the newborn baby girl. Then they had another vision they assumed from the women's spirit in the house, showing a black wound in brown dress racing through the woods with a caring infant with the master close behind her, until she lost him, and found her way to a verge where she left the baby girl just in time for her master to find her mom and murder her. But her baby daughter grew up safe and happy, and the servant women said she wanted to tell someone her story, and had guided her descendant Nia back to her master's house. So the priest exorcised the master's spirit out of the house, and Nia allowed the servant women's ghost to reside in the house with the family. The end.